击成功。
Okay, welcome back. Let's resume our class. And about the topic of subsidization, there's one important issue left. It's called agricultural support. Agriculture is a special field, is a special sector. Almost every country has been subsidizing its own agricultural sector. Why? Because it relates to food for the people, right? There is an ancient expression about food. People or humans regard food as heavens. What does that mean? Yes. And there is another important saying. It's called the desire for food and sex is part of human beings. What does that mean? You're good. What about others? You know what I'm talking about? Okay. Okay, then I've got an important concept about the domestic agricultural support measures. Yes. Look, this important concept, it's called AMS. What does it mean? WTO members have agreed under Article 6 of the Agreement on Agriculture, this is WTO agreement, agreed to reduce their level of support. Reduce their level of support. According to this agreement, agricultural support is allowed, but you need to commit to reduce the support. Okay? That's a level of support. Then expressed as their aggregate measurement of support. Aggregate measurement of support, AMS. That is the level of support. AMS refers to the level of domestic support. Okay. Then, the tasks of each WTO member, the task of each WTO member is to try to reduce this AMS, and we call it AMS commitment, to reduce the domestic support. It's called AMS commitment. Then there are three related concepts. One is called green box subsidies. The second one is called blue box subsidies. And the third one is called development box subsidies. There is one common name for the first two. What is that? Green box subsidies together with blue box subsidies. They share one common feature. These two types of subsidies do not provide price support to agricultural producers. Price support. Price support. Do not provide price support. The first two types. We've got other support, not just price. We've got other types of support. But the first two types do not provide price support. Just to have a browser page. It's not that important. But this one is important. AMS important. But that's everything about Chapter 7. Rules on unfair trade. Okay. We'll skip the other content and move on directly to Chapter 8. The rules on exceptions. As I mentioned just now, the exceptions are exceptions to these three chapters of substantive rules. Okay? The exception to the principle of non-discrimination, the exception to trade barriers, rules on trade barriers, and the exceptions to unfair trade. What's the exception to the unfair trade? You still remember the safeguard measures? Actually, this is an exception to unfair trade because safeguard measures are adopted, are taken for fair trade. You still got the memory of that? Safeguard measures are taken against fair trade. And that's why we call it's an exception to unfair trade. No worries, we will come to that later in the subsequent sections, okay? Okay. Question number 1, what are the common features of the rules on exceptions? The answer is like this. These rules have in common that they allow WTO members to adopt and maintain measures that protect other important societal values and interests. So, here, an important concept comes. In WTO law, the ultimate value is what? What is the ultimate value we're pursuing? I mentioned it before. Trade liberalization. Yes. That's the ultimate goal the WTO law is pursuing. But in reality, there are other important societal values and interests. For example, national security, public health. You still remember SPS? Okay, public health. The life of humans, animals, and plants. A lot of other important societal values and interests. Not just this trade liberalization. We've got other societal values and interests. What's the relationship between these two? Are they helping each other or are they contradictory? it depends. In some cases, they can support each other. But in other cases, they can contradict with each other. There will be conflict. Which value should prevail? Trade liberalization should always be the number one? Should always be the top priority? Not necessary like this. It's important, yes. Especially we are economic law majors, right? We advocate the value of trade liberalization, but it's not always like this. There are also other important societal values and interests we need to pay attention to. What is the legal consequence of the exception rules? The rules on exceptions. What's the legal consequence of these rules on exceptions? The legal consequence of the exception rules is to give priority to certain societal values and interests over trade liberalization. Listen, with these rules, these other societal values and interests would take priority over the trade liberalization. Under what circumstances? Trade liberalization should make room or make way for other societal values and interests under these circumstances. This is the table of contents. Exceptions under this. Actually, Section 1 and Section 2 are both about general exception. Very good. General exception. And the Section 3 is about national security or international security exception. And Section 4 is about safeguard measures, as we mentioned just now. 5, 6, 7 are about balance of payment, regional trade agreements, and economic development. Under these rules on exceptions, other important societal values and interests will prevail over the value of trade liberalization. Okay, now let's talk about them one by one. There are 6 main categories of exceptions, as you can see. Section 1, general exceptions under Article 20 of GATT 1994. It's Article 20. Article 20 is about the general exception. Okay. This numeral, you need to memorize this numeral. Article 20 is about the general exceptions. Article 20 of GATT 1994 is about the general exceptions. And this type of exception is the most important exception. of all the 6 categories. Exception rules. The first type, this one, is the most important one. Okay, let's welcome this hero. But the class is almost over. Anyway, you're highly welcome, and it shows a spirit of struggling and the passion of learning, right? Passion and enthusiasm is important in learning. Okay, then a very important issue about this Article 20. Look, where is this article located? Yes, it's article of GATT 1994. Then my question would be, will this Article 20, the general exception rule, applicable to other agreement, for example, the anti-dumping agreement? Yes or no? Look, this article is Article 20 of this agreement. My question is this article applicable to this agreement only, or can also be applicable to other agreements, for example, anti-dumping agreements, SCM agreements? Yes or no? For these, yes or no? No. It depends. It depends. Provided that these agreements, these specific agreements stipulates specifically that they are applicable, they are subject to Article 20. You got the point? I'll repeat it again. Give you an example. If there is an agreement, I'll give you the example of this one. You still remember this agreement? It's also a specific agreement, right? And we've also got the TFA. It's also a specific WTO agreement under GATT 1994. In these two agreements, it's stipulated explicitly that Article 20 of GATT 1994 is applicable to these two agreements because they stipulate that. These two stipulate that. But this one, no. This one, no. So the principle is Article 20 only applies to GATT 1994, with the exception that the specific agreements explicitly stipulate that Article 20 applies to them. Okay? Okay. You think that's important? Yes, because there is a real case in reality. For example, there is a case relating to China. You still remember China's protocol protocol of accession. Do you remember that? In this agreement, it stipulates that the Article 20 applies to this agreement. Then, in practice, China can invoke Article 20 as a justification, right? Right, good. Then, next important question is about China accession protocol implicitly. But here, look, it's not explicitly, it's implicitly. Implicitly incorporate Article 20, okay? So that's something in dispute. China says, we incorporate Article 20, but implicitly. Next important question would be related to, no, not that far. Here, this paragraph. This paragraph is rather important. Just like this one. What are the requirements? What are the conditions for us to apply Article 20? Right? You must satisfy or meet some conditions before you apply this article. Yes or no? Of course. Then what are the requirements for an otherwise get inconsistent measure to be justified under Article 20 of GATT 1994? What are the two requirements? Two. Okay, let's read them together. One means the lawyers and the judges must always examine first whether this measure can provisionally be justified under one of the specific justification grounds listed in paragraphs A to J of Article 20, which means Article 20 of GATT 1994 has J. How many? 7. Okay. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, O. That's many. Maybe 10. 10 subparagraphs. Yes. First, you need to be provisionally justified. Why we call it provisionally? Because we've still got the requirement number 2. Okay? Number 2 is like this. If it's justified under GATT, Article 20, A to J, one of them, any one of them, then let's move on to the second step. It's called whether the application of this measure meets the requirements of the SHAPO. What does SHAPO mean? SHAPO means hat. Or we call it the introduction or introductory part. Introductory part. SHAPO. Have you noticed that in China's constitution, the Constitution of the People's Republic of China, there is a long, long, long chapeau. You got that? Yeah, that is what we call chapeau. But here, this chapeau is rather important because it constitutes the second important requirement if you want to use this Article 20 as a justification. Okay, good. Then let's move on. This is number 2. And the first one would be Article 20. For example, A. First, you need to meet the requirements of Article 20A. Second, you need to meet the requirements provided in the chapeau. Right, good. These 2. But for meet the first requirement, there's also how many requirements? Yes. How many? You can check it afterwards. Yes, in the subsequent part. It's also 2, right? Yes or no? 2. Also 2. 2 requirements. Requirement number 1 is the measure must be designed to realize the objective stipulated in Article 20A. I mean A, this one, A. Designed for the objective. Designed for the objective stipulated in Article 20A. The second requirement would be the measure must be necessary. Must be necessary to realize the objective. Okay. So, look. It's very clear, right? For the first requirement, for this one, you need also 2. So in total, we have 3, right? 1, 2, then 3 requirements. Necessary. We will talk about it later in detail, okay? But right now, you need to know that these are the requirements before you are using Article 20 to justify your measures, okay? Then comes the interesting part. I'll give you a short video to show you an interesting case, okay?
The United States shrimp import ban case was the first dispute adjudicated under the World Trade Organization dispute resolution system, in which the relationship between international trade control and the environment's protection was at issue. The dispute is related to a measure adopted by the United States requiring all shrimp vessels to use a certain net in catching shrimp in areas where their shrimp trawling interact.
Have already signed up. 在哪儿？
这是窗外。
念就那个知网看自己的东西都要钱。
With sea turtles. The legislation aimed to protect turtles, as harvesting shrimp tend incidentally to catch sea. The United States shrimp import ban case was the first dispute adjudicated under the World Trade Organization dispute resolution system, in which the relationship between international trade control and the environment's protection was at issue. The dispute is related to a measure adopted by the United States requiring all shrimp vessels to use a certain net in catching shrimp in areas where their shrimp trawling interacts with sea turtles. The legislation aimed to protect turtles, as harvesting shrimp tend incidentally to catch sea turtles. Some of them are endangered. As a result, foreign shrimp could only be imported to America if the exporting country harvesting did not adversely affect sea turtles. India, Malaysia, Pakistan, and Thailand initiated formal dispute settlement proceedings against the United States before the WTO, as they were denied import certificates after non-compliance with the American requirements. They claimed that the United States violated Article 11 of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, which prohibits quantitative restrictions on the importation or the exportation of any product. In its defense, the United States argued that the measure was applied in a non-discriminatory way and was justified to protect an endangered species. The panel and the appellate body found against the United States by saying that the American import ban on shrimp violated Article 11, and that although the ban was covered under Article 20 exception related to the conservation of exhaustible natural resources, it could not be justified because the ban constituted arbitrary and unjustifiable discrimination, in addition to the rigidity of the manner in which the American measure was applied, and on the absence of fairness and due process in the certification procedures.
Silicon metal.
Have you got the point? What information have you got? Article number 11, quantitative restrictions. Got that? And what else? Article 20, have you got the information that the United States invoked Article 20 to justify its measures, right? Why the United States banned the shrimp import because the way of your harvest shrimps can harm the turtles. That's something related to environmental protection, right? Because this thing, I would like to protect the environment, so I restrict all the imports, all the shrimps that would endanger the sea turtles. It's invoked Article 20, not A, maybe 20, maybe it's about D, Article 20D. In the end, is the United States successful? No, why not? I tell you why not. Because of the shadow part. The United States adopts its measure in a discriminatory way. That's, of course, you still don't know that. But in this part, it stipulates two requirements. Non-discriminatory way. And the second is not a disguised restriction on trade. Okay. Because the United States violated the first requirement of the SHAPO, it adopts the measure in a discriminatory way. So the United States lost the case. And this is actually the first case in the WTO dispute settlement, because it happened in 1998. In which year was WTO establishment? 1995, right? So in 1998, it was the first WTO case. It's called the U.S. Shrimp. U.S. Shrimp. Shrimp, yes. Good. Have you noticed that it's called, yes, this, conservation of exhaustible natural resources. It's Article 20G. Okay, 20G. 20G, okay. Just now I said B. It's actually 20G. It means sea turtles belong to inexhaustible natural resources. Okay. Then comes another important issue. I don't know I have enough time to explain it clearly. The jurisdiction. You know, the United States measure to ban the imports of shrimps. But you are protecting the natural resources of where? You know, the exporters of the shrimps are harvesting the shrimps in their own jurisdiction. Yes or no? For example, I'm an exporter of shrimps to the United States. Then I'm harvesting the shrimps here in China, in China's sea waters, right? Then you are protecting the public morals, the exhaustible natural resources. But our sea waters has nothing to do with yours. How can you invoke Article G? Because you don't have jurisdiction over the sea waters of China. That's something in dispute or controversial. What's the opinion of the WTO DSB? Or what's the opinion of the AB? I'll tell you. Is there explicit jurisdictional limitation in Article 20? The answer is no. No jurisdictional limitation, which means the United States can always protect the resources outside its jurisdiction. Yes, they can. But, however, it is an open question whether measures that aim to protect one of the listed societal values or interests outside territorial jurisdiction of the member taking the measure can be justified under Article 20 of the GATT 1994. I'll repeat it again. There is no explicit jurisdictional limitation in Article 20, but it's still in dispute, which means the WTO dispute settlement has no specific and a clear answer on this question. It's still in dispute. Nobody knows. Okay. It's still in issue, in dispute. Okay, that's everything for this week's class. Do you have any questions? Any questions? If you have no questions, any questions? If you do not have any questions, we will conclude this week's class. Okay? I will see you next Wednesday.